When my parents passed away, I walked into the will reading expecting at least a small acknowledgement of my place in the family. Instead, I watched in shock as the lawyer announced that everything, the house, the savings, the land, was going to my older brother. I felt invisible, betrayed, and foolish for believing my parents saw me as more than a shadow in my brother's life. But then, as everyone was getting up to leave, the lawyer quietly pressed a sealed envelope into my hands, telling me it was meant for me alone. The handwriting on the front was my father's, and my name was written in a way that made my chest tighten. Inside that envelope, I would discover a truth that could rewrite not only my inheritance, but my entire understanding of who I am, and why my parents made the choices they did. Hadn't stepped into my parents' lawyer's office since I was a teenager, back when I signed a few school forms under his watch. The air still smelled faintly of old books and dust, like nothing had moved here in decades. My brother, Daniel, sat across from me in his neatly pressed suit, his knee bouncing with barely contained energy. He didn't look at me once. Mr. Carson. The lawyer cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and began reading. It was all formal language at first, the kind you hear in movies but never expect to apply to your own life. My mind wandered, thinking about how my mother used to scold us for leaving lights on, or how my father insisted on polishing his shoes every Sunday. I was holding on to those small, ordinary memories because I didn't know what else to expect then. The words hit me like a brick to the chest. All properties, investments, and possessions are to be transferred to my son, Daniel Carter. I blinked. Maybe I misheard. But Mr. Carson continued, his voice steady, as though he wasn't cutting the ground out from under my feet. He listed the family home, the lake cabin, even my mother's jewelry, the same necklace she once told me would be mine on my wedding day. Everything. To Daniel. My stomach tightened. I tried to keep my face blank, but the heat in my cheeks betrayed me. Daniel leaned back in his chair, folding his hands, looking every bit like the golden child our parents had always treated him as. When the reading was done, there was no mention of me. Not even a token gesture. No photograph, no keepsake, not a single word of acknowledgement. I stood, ready to leave before the humiliation could deepen, when Mr. Carson's voice stopped me. Miss Carter, he said quietly. There's one more thing. Daniel glanced over, curiosity flickering across his face. But Mr. Carson didn't look at him. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small, sealed envelope. My name was written on the front in my father's handwriting, the kind that dipped slightly on the right, like it was leaning into the future. This is for you, Mr. Carson said. Your father insisted it be given privately. My fingers shook as I took it. The paper felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried more than ink and words. Daniel's voice was sharp. What is that? None of your concern, Mr. Carson replied, in a tone that silenced him. I left the office without another word, the envelope burning in my hand. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I walked to my car and sat behind the wheel, staring at my name. My father hadn't spoken much in his final months, but the last time I saw him, he squeezed my hand so tightly I thought it might bruise. I slid a finger under the flap. Inside was a folded letter, and something else, thin, metallic, and cold. But before I could see what it was, a shadow fell across my car window, and a voice I hadn't heard in years said my name. I froze. That voice didn't belong to anyone from my immediate life, not anymore. Slowly, I turned my head, and there he was. Mark. My ex-boyfriend from nearly a decade ago, the man I thought I'd left behind along with all the painful memories tied to him. His hair was shorter now, a faint streak of gray near his temple. But his eyes were the same, sharp, watchful, like he knew things before you said them. I cracked the window, my pulse thudding in my ears. What are you doing here? He glanced at the envelope in my hand, then back at me. I could ask you the same thing. I didn't think you'd actually show up for the reading. The way he said it, like he'd been expecting me not to come, set off a quiet alarm in my head. How do you even know about that? I asked. Mark gave a humorless smile. Let's just say your family's business has always had an audience. I didn't like the sound of that. I didn't like that he was here at all. The last time I saw him, we were standing in my parents' driveway, shouting at each other until the neighbors closed their blinds. I told him never to come near me again. And yet, here he was, on the day I learned my parents had left me nothing but questions. I slipped the envelope into my bag, not wanting him to see what was inside. I don't have time for this, I said, starting the car. But before I could put it in gear, he rested a hand on my open window frame. You should read that letter somewhere safe, he said. And whatever you do, don't tell Daniel you have it. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. Why? Because, he said, lowering his voice, your father didn't trust him. And neither should you. I drove away before he could say more, but his words clung to me like smoke. My father, not trusting Daniel? That didn't make sense. He had trusted him with everything. Literally everything. I parked in a secluded corner of the library lot, away from prying eyes, and finally opened the letter. My father's handwriting was rushed, uneven. If you're reading this, it means the will has been read and you've seen what I've done. I need you to understand it was not by choice. There are things I could not say in front of your brother, or even your mother. Things that go back to before you were born. What's inside this envelope is the key, literally. Use it carefully. And for God's sake, don't let Daniel know you have it. I reached into the envelope again and pulled out the small object I'd felt earlier. A key. Old-fashioned, brass, and engraved with a number, 317. No indication of what it opened. As I sat there, turning the key over in my hand, I spotted movement in the rearview mirror. A car had pulled into the lot and parked 3 spaces behind me. The driver was watching me, and the driver was Daniel. Daniel didn't move for a full 10 seconds. He just watched me in the mirror, one hand on his steering wheel, the other drumming in that rhythm he used when we were kids, and he was hiding something. I slid the key back into the envelope and tucked it under my thigh. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I ignored it and opened my door like nothing in my life had changed. Inside the library, I let the cool hush swallow me. I walked past the circulation desk, smiled at the librarian I barely recognized, and headed down the back staircase toward the archives. Then I doubled back, slipped through the side exit into the alley, and came around behind the parking lot. When I peered around the brick corner, Daniel was still in his car, scanning the front entrance. He didn't know about the side door. He never noticed back doors. Rules had always opened the front ones for him. Forced myself to breathe normally as I crossed 2 streets and cut through the bakery. The sweet smell of yeast and cinnamon made my chest hurt. Mom used to bring home a braided loaf every Saturday. She'd tear off the smallest piece and call it the tax, winking like life could be that simple, one small cost, and everything else is yours. Today the price felt like everything. I reached the bus depot a block over, that old brick box. They renovated but never really modernized. My father took me there when I was little to watch the arrivals. He liked timetables, keys, compartments where things fit. In the back hall were lockers, sturdy, stubborn, the kind that looked like they could outlive anyone who tried to break them. My hand tightened around the envelope until the paper bent. Row 3. Column 1. Locker 317 waited in the corner like a held breath. The brass key slid in with a soft click that traveled up my arm. I hesitated, because once you open something, you can't unknow it. Then I turned the key. Inside was a battered metal tin and a manila folder. The tin was the size of a paperback, dented at the corners, elastic band holding it shut. The folder had my name on the tab, written in my father's quick, leaning hand. The sight of that slanted handwriting almost undid me. I took both and closed the locker, slipping the key back into my pocket like it might protect me. A voice cleared behind me. Not Daniel's. A throatier sound, followed by a steady inhale. I turned. An attendant in a blue vest was watching from his booth, pretending not to be. The phone in my pocket buzzed again. The same unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Don't go home," Mark said, skipping hello. "If he follows you, go. Somewhere public. Somewhere with cameras." "He doesn't know I'm here," I whispered, glancing at the booth. "Why are you calling me, Mark? How do you know any of this?" "Because I worked for your father," he said. "Not the way you think. Just, please don't argue with me right now. Open the tin where you feel safe." The line went dead. I stared at the screen, then at the tin in my hands. My father and Mark? That didn't belong in any of the stories I kept of my family, the ones where Dad's hands smelled like motor oil and fresh lemons, where Daniel stood too close to the fireplace and lied smoothly about who broke the lamp. I took the tin to the depot bathroom, locked myself in the last stall, and balanced everything on the tank lid. The elastic band snapped like a tiny whip. Inside the tin, a flash drive, an old cassette tape labeled with the date of my 10th birthday. A small velvet pouch, and a folded note. I opened the note first. The paper had been folded so many times that the creases had gone white. "If you have the tin, then I failed to fix what I should have fixed years ago. Do not trust what's written in the will. Trust the numbers and the voices. The drive has the numbers. The tape has the voice. The pouch has the piece of you I have no right to keep, and yet I kept it because I was a coward. I'm sorry." I opened the pouch with trembling fingers and let a chain slide into my palm, the chain of my mother's necklace, the one I watched Daniel inherit 15 minutes ago. Not just a twin of it. The necklace. The clasp was bent in the same place where Mom once snagged it on a sweater. How did my father have this if the will said it went to Daniel? I could hear my mother's laugh echoing against tile that didn't care about ghosts, and folded the manila folder. Inside were spreadsheets printed in tiny fonts, bank names I recognized, and two I didn't. Transfers, withdrawals, a trust one had never heard of. There were memos on company letterhead with Daniel's signature, and notes in my father's hand next to them. "Don't show to her. She will leave. She must not leave." My eyes blurred. Was I the her? Or was it Mom? I fished around in my bag for earbuds and realized I didn't even own anything that could play a cassette. A stranger's life would have laughed then, mine just kept moving. I pocketed the flash drive. When I looked up, the bathroom light flickered like a warning, the stall door rattled. I went still. Another rattle, harder. A woman's voice apologized. And moved on, but my heart had already sprinted to the finish line. I bundled the tin, folder, and pouch back into my bag and pushed out to the sinks. I splashed my face, tasting metal in the water as if the key had dissolved into the tap. Outside, the depot looked the same, but everything felt tilted. I took 2 steps toward the exit and stopped. Daniel stood just beyond the glass doors, talking to the attendant in the blue vest. The attendant gestured toward the hall of lockers. Daniel turned his head, and in the reflection on the glass I saw my own face over his shoulder, white and watchful, as if I were the ghost and he were the living. He lifted his phone. Mine buzzed. A text from him, like we were just siblings running errands. "Where are you? We should talk." I backed into the hall and slipped behind a vending machine. The flash drive pressed into my hip. The note's words throbbed in my skull. Trust the numbers and the voices. My father had hidden my mother's necklace from the boy who'd been gifted everything. He'd hidden ledgers that contradicted the will. The tape with my 10th birthday stared up at me from the tin like an eye that had finally opened after years of sleep. The numbers were true. Daniel hadn't been given everything. He'd taken it. And if the voice on that tape said what I feared, the story of our family had a chapter I'd never been allowed to read. The glass door swung open. Footsteps entered the hall. They stopped at locker 317. Keys jingled, too many. Keys, an impatient hand searching for the right one. Then a whisper, low and deliberate, not Daniel's, drifting around the vending machine, "She's here. Don't spook her. Let her open it and then we move." I tightened my grip on the tin, swallowed my name down like medicine, and turned toward the emergency exit. My fingers brushed the bar, and a siren wailed to life as the door flew outward. In the half-second before the sound swallowed me, a thought landed so clearly it was almost calm. The voice on the tape isn't my father's at all. It's Daniel's. The emergency exit spat me out into the blinding afternoon light. The siren still wailed behind me, shrill enough to turn heads on the sidewalk. I forced myself to keep walking, resisting the urge to run. Running would only confirm that I had something worth chasing. I ducked into the first cafe I saw, the kind with cramped tables and steamed-up windows. I ordered a coffee I didn't want and slid into a corner booth, bag on my lap, heart still trying to find its rhythm. The tin sat between my knees like it was breathing with me. I needed to hear the tape. The thought had been gnawing at me since I read my father's note, but now it felt urgent, like whatever was on it might explain why strangers were whispering about me at a bus depot. I pulled out my phone and searched for a place that could digitize cassettes. One popped up 3 blocks away. I drained half my coffee in one swallow, left cash on the table, and slipped back outside. The shop was a hole-in-the-wall electronics repair place, all flickering bulbs and stacks of obsolete gadgets. A man in a faded band t-shirt looked up from behind the counter. "Help you?" I set the tape down like it might shatter. "Can you play this for me? Or copy it to something I can listen to right now?" He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a small back room with a pair of worn headphones clamped over my ears. The hiss of the tape filled the silence, and then, a voice. It wasn't my father's, it was Daniel. Younger, maybe by a decade, but unmistakably him. His tone was casual, almost bored, like he was recounting the weather. "You'll tell her it's all mine," he said. "You'll make it legal." "I don't care how." A second voice answered, my father's. Tight, defensive. "She's your sister, Daniel. She has a right." Her right, Daniel cut in, "is to keep quiet and not look too closely at where the money came from." "You really want her digging through old files? Through the trust?" The word trust hit me like a physical blow. The folder in my bag suddenly felt heavier. There was a pause, then my father's voice again, low and resigned. "This isn't what we agreed on." "You agreed," Daniel said, "when you took the first payment." A click. The tape cut off. I pulled the headphones off, my hands slick with sweat. The shop owner was watching me from the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You want a copy?" he asked. I nodded. My voice didn't trust itself. While he worked, I stepped outside to breathe. The street felt too open. I kept seeing Daniel's reflection in glass, kept hearing his voice bending my father's will like it was nothing more than paper. If he was willing to blackmail our own father, what would he do to me? My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "He knows. You heard it. Don't go back to your car." I typed back, "Where should I go?" With 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply. The shop owner handed me a small USB stick. "Be careful who you trust," he said, and locked the door behind me. I walked without a destination, the USB in one pocket, the flash drive from my father in the other. If the tape proved Daniel manipulated the will, the numbers might prove where the money had gone. Together, they could tear everything open, but every step I took, I felt watched. Passing a parked van, I caught my reflection in its tinted window, and behind me, the faint outline of a man in a dark jacket, keeping pace. I turned sharply down an alley, heart pounding. At the far end, a figure stepped into view. It was Mark. He held up both hands in a gesture of peace, but his eyes were locked on the bag slung over my shoulder. Before I could speak, a shout echoed from behind me, Daniel's voice, too close, too certain. Don't let her leave. I didn't run. I stepped out of the alley into the main street like a person with nothing to hide, like my heartbeat wasn't slamming against my ribs. Mark fell into step beside me without touching me. Daniel's footsteps closed in from behind, echoing between buildings. I veered toward a hotel with glass walls and a lobby camera positioned like a red eye above the doors. If I was going to be cornered, I wanted witnesses. The doorman hesitated, then let us pass. I headed straight for the sitting area by the fireplace, where a couple in business suits were pretending not to eavesdrop. I placed the tin on the table, then the manila folder, then the USB with Daniel's voice on it, lining them up like evidence at a trial. Daniel slowed, recalculating. Mark stood at a diagonal, ready to block without making a scene. Give me the bag, Daniel said softly. His calm voice was always worse than his anger. It meant he thought he'd already won. You're making yourself look ridiculous. I met his eyes and spoke just as softly. I heard the tape. A flash, then a mask. What tape? Your tape. The one where you tell Dad to make it all yours. I tilted my head toward the desk clerk, toward the camera. I can play it. On speaker. We can crowdsource an opinion. Color crept into his face, then drained away. He looked at Mark as if only then remembering he existed. You again, he said. You never could mind your own business. Mark didn't blink. Her business is my business. The words ricocheted inside me. I opened the folder. Spreadsheets and wire transfers breathed across the table like a second set of lungs. The numbers, I said. They show money moving from Dad's company into accounts you controlled. Shells, trusts, then back out through Mom's charity like a washing machine. You called it a scholarship fund. You made me speak at that gala when I was 19. Daniel's mouth twitched. You're out of your depth. Maybe, I said. But Dad wasn't. He left the math. He left your voice. And he left me this. I lifted the velvet pouch and let my mother's necklace spill into the light. The woman at the adjacent couch inhaled. The clasp bent in. That familiar place caught the flame's reflection. He hid it from you, I said, because he knew the will wasn't the truth. Daniel stepped closer. The truth is simple. Dad made mistakes. I cleaned them up. He wanted the company to survive. You think you were left out because I'm cruel? He left you out because you can't keep a secret. I almost laughed. Whose secret? Yours or mine? His eyes flicked, just a fraction, to the folder. It was enough. I slid 3 pages free and placed them in front of him. A hospital intake form. A notarized declaration. A transfer of guardianship signed the week I was born. You knew, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. You've always known I wasn't Mom's biological daughter. The room got quieter in the way rooms do when meaning changes the air. Mark didn't move. Daniel let out a breath that wasn't quite a sigh. Of course I knew, he said. I was 7. I was old enough to see the way they were with you. He kept the paperwork in a different safe, but he never kept his face in a different place. My throat tightened, but I didn't let the tears come. Not here, not where his satisfaction would drink them. You blackmailed him with this? With me? I protected what he built, Daniel said. And what he built included you. He took money that didn't belong to him and moved it through accounts that would never be audited. He told himself it was for the family, for charity, for legacy. He told himself a lot of things. I learned to tell the ones that kept us above water. By threatening him, I said. By rewriting the will. He made a small, impatient gesture. By choosing. That's what adults do. Mark stepped forward. You coerced a dying man to disinherit his daughter. Daniel's gaze sliced toward him. Why are you here, Mark? To cash in your last favor? To play hero for the girl who left you? I'm here, Mark said, because her father asked me to be. A hollow opened under my feet. When? 2 years ago, he said without taking his eyes off Daniel. When he realized the only way to keep you safe was to make you look worthless on paper. Daniel laughed, too loud for the elegant lobby. Safe from what? A paper tiger? He gestured at me with his chin. Go on, then. Tell her the part you left out. Mark's jaw worked. I thought of the tape, the numbers, the necklace like a small moon in my palm. Just say it, I told him. He turned to me, and something in his face softened, almost broke. Your father believed the money you were living on, the money he'd been moving for years, came from people who would rather see you disappear than see the inside of a courtroom. He asked me to keep eyes on you. To keep you out of the line of sight. The will, it was camouflage. I tasted copper. The lobby tilted. Camouflage, I repeated. Daniel's smile was thin and vicious. And like any good hunter, I learned to shoot through leaves. I pulled the USB from my pocket and my phone from my bag, thumb hovering over the screen. One upload, I said. One post with your voice and Dad's ledgers, and this lobby becomes a press conference. He didn't flinch. Upload it, he said. But check the dates first. I glanced down. The tape's date. The ledger entries. The hospital form. The scholarship gala. My 10th birthday. The numbers braided into a timeline, and in the braid a knot, a transfer labeled with a name that wasn't mine at all, my birth name, the one on the guardianship form, attached to an account I'd never seen. An account with a balance that made my mouth go dry. Mark saw it too. He did set something aside, he whispered. Not in the family name. In yours. Daniel watched my face and smiled like a locksmith. Now you understand why I wanted it all on paper, he said. Because on paper, you were no one. Off paper, you're the fuse. A hush fell so deep the fire's hiss sounded like a secret. I closed my fingers over the USB, over the flash drive, over the necklace. If I'm the fuse, I said, then maybe I get to decide what burns. I lifted my phone. The clerk behind the desk picked up his own. The red eye above the door blinked. Outside, sirens began to rise, distant but growing, as if the city had started to breathe in time with my heart. Last chance, Daniel said, very quiet now. Hand it over. We walk out together. Last chance, Mark echoed to me, not to him. Pick your fire. I pressed my thumb to the screen and chose.